Geoffrey Roche, professionally director of workforce development at Siemens Healthineers, also motivational speaker and leadership development coach.
And you've got a story that you
Yeah,
would like to share with us. Give it to me.
yeah. So obviously on LinkedIn, many people know me as the son of a nurse, proud son of an amazing mother and nurse, but also many know me there as a heart leader. And the reason for that heart leader aspect is that I actually 4 years ago, Valentine's Day of 2020, very young age, had a pacemaker that was implanted into my heart. And many people don't realize that pacemakers generally are for older people. But for me, I'm a runner, and for many years, struggled with low heart rate. And after many hospitals, doctors, you name it, many people could not figure out what was wrong. They would regularly say, "Oh no, he's just getting up too quick. He's going to the bathroom, and he's just he's just not taking the time to actually adjust and get up." Ultimately, through the advocacy of my mother, again, the nursing connection there, my mother said, those answers weren't good enough. And so we continued to really fight on and navigate what we know is an interesting healthcare space. And ultimately, through that journey, after fainting many times, fainting at national parks, fainting in my house, fainting in many places, we were able to convince a team of physicians that, just put a loop recorder in, which is, very small device, which gets placed right above your heart. That loop recorder was put in about 8 months prior to ultimately the pacemaker. And that loop recorder tracks your heart rate in all activity, when you're sleeping, when you're up, when you're down, everything. And for me, in fact, I was just having this conversation with my primary care physician today. That loop recorder tracked an evening episode where I woke up early in the morning, was about to start my day. And I knew I got up and I felt like something's wrong. I knew energy level was not there. I immediately got to the ground and I just sort of laid in that ground. And, a few minutes later, my phone rings and it was the cardiology office saying, "Where are you?" I was like, "Well, I'm right here. You can hear me." And they're like, "Yeah, but is someone else there? Because we want to figure out like what's happening." Ultimately, what the loop recorder recorded was that I had a 32 heart rate with a 4-second pause. And ultimately, a 4-second pause is a pretty dramatic impact, because obviously there could be impact to blood oxygen and such. Ultimately, I was fine, and ended up having that pacemaker put in just a day or two after that episode. Now, the irony to that is, I had the pacemaker put in. It's a micro pacemaker by Medtronic, very small, literally this big. Now, I tell all guys that have to have this put in, not the best procedure because they go up through the groin, but it is what it is. But a few years later, my father died of a sudden cardiac arrest, and obviously, when you reflect on that, there's so much that comes. But just a few months ago, I had the privilege of speaking at a biomedical engineering conference. And for those that don't know that space, in essence, it's all the colleges, universities that are in the biomed space, which makes the space that develops the workforce to develop the medical devices and technology that ultimately can keep all of us living. Well, obviously, I'm the recipient of a medical device that allows me to live, and I serve professionally at a medical device and technology company. While I was speaking to these students, telling them, why they should consider a career and why I even thought of serving in a med tech company, I shared this story in a much smaller version, not with all this detail. And interestingly enough, afterwards, this senior scientist from Medtronic comes up to me and he says to me, "Geoffrey, he's like, that story was really powerful. I'm really glad you shared that with the students." He said, "Can I tell you something?" And I said, "Sure." He said, do you have the micro pacemaker?" And I said, "I do." He goes, "You won't believe this." He said, "I was the senior scientist on the leads that lead into the micro." And so it was one of those kind of like full circle moments where I, immediately said to him, "Hey, can we grab a picture? Because I've got to show this to my family." And I had to, obviously show it to my children, my 3 boys, because, for them, this has been an interesting journey. They remember when daddy would not, not necessarily appear as if I would be able to continue on in these situations. And then obviously they know of their grandfather passing from this. And so kind of a full circle moment across the board.
That's incredible. You've, for all intents and purposes, saved by medicine. Has that shifted your emotional purpose, like mindset as a human being on this earth? Do you feel this divine calling to do something specific with the additional time that you've been given from this medical device?
It's such an interesting question. I mean, the short answer is I was always somebody who got into good trouble. Probably now I'm more into good trouble. I'm definitely one that when I look at sort of that full connection of why I go by the hashtag on LinkedIn heart leader, is that this experience really rejuvenated in me a strong commitment that I had prior, but even more so, in that ultimately, when you're in the workplace, if you've got bad culture, it's going to stress you to a point where it can impact your heart. And so, what it really has lifted up for me is to challenge the status quo of organizational cultures and be willing to call a spade for what it is. And ultimately, I regularly tell people that when we look at leadership in our nation and when we look at leadership in organizations, we need to have leaders who truly care about people. And so that's a lot of the work that I do, through my work on LinkedIn, is to really inspire people to think about what it means to lead with your heart, what it means to build relationships with a heart connected, what it means to have genuine connection, truly inspires, but also at the same time empowers, encourages, appreciates, and values one another. And so, in that space, it certainly has.
Mm. What do the next couple years look like for you?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the aspects that I have loved about my journey and my experience has been really the power of storytelling and how you can leverage storytelling to really impact others. And I was just speaking at a conference this week, and an individual afterwards came up to me and she said, "Did you rehearse that story?" And I said, "No, that was the first time I told that story." A different story, but a similar situation. And she said to me, she said, "Because I'm working on this, but the way you told it was so authentic." She said, "So I was just curious how you went about that." And so as I look through this, I mean, the reality of it is that I need to take the next step of really how do I further my dream of being a much larger motivational public speaker, and how do I leverage the experiences and journey that I've had to really impact others in a very positive manner.
In your daily rituals, do you have any mantras or specifically rituals that help align you to your purpose or to just have a good day in general, right? To live a more elevated life? Do you have a prescription that you follow? For myself, right? I'm a journaler, meditator, and the walk with my dog, I think, has saved my life a couple of times, just
Mm,
in terms of mental health. Do you have
mhm.
anything like that you do every single day as a ritual that helps you stay aligned with your goal and your focus?
Certainly my running, at some.
You still run with the pacemaker.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and
Have
in
to.
fact, I was just having that conversation with my primary care provider this morning, asking him, "Hey, I'm training for a half marathon, are we good with that?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "You have no restrictions." And so he said, "But, check with the cardiologist." And the short answer is, even if they said no, I'm going to do it, because it's a personal goal of mine. I used to be a significantly heavy person, well over 110 pounds heavier than I am now. And, it was really running that irony is that running was what, helped me get to a much healthier place and also became a self-care solution for me. And then ultimately, also contributed to, ultimately having a low heart rate, possibly whatever the case may have been. But it is by far, an important element of self-care. And so if I don't get a run in, I do, some aspect of a high intense cardio. But the other piece I'll say is, you know, for me, I remind myself every day how fortunate I am to have three sons that, I can demonstrate these examples for, and, certainly live vicariously, through watching them as they grow up.
I love that. Jeffrey, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so super active on LinkedIn. Obviously, Geoffrey M. Roche on there, son of a nurse, heart leader. They'll see me there, and that's a great way to connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.